All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Strategic Priorities, Communication and Intergovernmental Cooperation Committee for July 24th, 2025 here at City Hall. We are going to call the meeting to order. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest?
None.
Hearing none. Do I have an approval of the agenda?
Approved. Second.
We have approval of the previous draft minutes from June 26th of 2025.
Approved.
Second. Is there any business arising from those minutes?
Yes.
There is.
What?
Mayor Brown.
Just wanted to find out with Rory Chase on here, on the update of our website. I know you're working on it. But I've discovered that our website is so loaded that if you wanna go and look at the tree inventory for the city of Charlottetown, you just go to Environment Sustainability, click on, like that's a big link. So are we looking at this new vendor, streamline all this information? I just wanna find out where we're going because it's been talked about.
Yeah, I can address that now if you'd like. It's essentially as part of the new move, anything like that could be addressed. It doesn't have to be, but it's something where when they are managing content, they can shorten all those links, basically, yeah. So it definitely could be part of it.
To add to that, I think there was, when we looked at the proposal that James had put forward in the report, there was two options. Option one was really just a lift and shift to a new platform, kind of like for like all content. The second one was more robust in the way that there would be consideration given to the content of the website, navigation, links, images, etc. It would be more full scope, kind of streamlining and probably simplifying the experience, the user experience on the Charlottetown website. So I think we were leaning more towards option two as being the preferred method, which then would address likely the concern. Now, I expect that when that project gets approved, if that project gets approved and we move forward on that there will be stakeholder consultations, not only with the public and business community, but also internally here, because it's used as a tool internally as well to gather information and to promote information. So things of that nature, I think you talked about the environment sustainability or the tree inventory.
Tree inventory, it's a great app, but it's a lot of.
So all those things should be considered as part of the information architecture.
And I may actually get you to just send me that link afterwards, and it might be something we can fix right now.
No, it's fine, it works,
Yeah.
it's a huge application, in my view. So, again, Mr. Chair, I just wanna make sure that, and as I said at the last meeting, Rory, that, you know, the .org, the .com are not the most popular sites to go, or not, I shouldn't say popular sites, but everybody's not going to web pages, they're going to links on social media and other apps. So with our new web page, there will be direct links to everything that we have connected to our platform to get information out.
There definitely should be,
Yeah.
It should be part of that process, yeah.
And just in the other issue, Mr. Chair, is page 3 on the Boulder Park. Did anyone follow up with the Speaker's office to find out what we're gonna be doing? What's the relationship between the city and the Legislative Assembly on going forward? 'Cause I think that was
That's a great question.
someone, I know I asked, that it was Joe Jeffrey, clerk of the Office of the Speaker. So just wanna find out if we have any follow-up.
It was, just give me 1 second. It was addressed here during our last meeting that there certainly, is a strong desire by this committee to be a part of those discussions. And then, of course, we had that discussion moved over into our council meeting and also reinforced and supported there that we should be a active stakeholder in the development of that policy. I think they were calling it a land use policy, or there was a term for it, it's just eluding me right at the moment, ground use policy. So the ground use policy and that, so yes, to Mike Russ, if you can enlighten us on any discussions you may have had or may not have had at this point with the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just I guess to try and answer the mayor's question, following that meeting of this committee and the council meeting, we did reach out to their office to ask, what their process was going forward in development of this grounds use policy, and also make the request that representatives of the city be part of that overall discussion. They had indicated that they would review with their office and get back to us. We haven't had a response as of yet, but we can certainly follow up again.
It should be through you as chair, working with that office to make sure that we're
Part of that.
on board and with wide use. And again, I make comparisons to Victoria Park. It's covered by the Victoria Park Act. Yes, we didn't buy the land, but we are responsible for the maintenance and the care of that park, which is about 40 acres of the 100 acres. And if you look at also, if you also look at the Confederation Trail, 13.2 kilometers goes right through the city. We don't own it, but we take care of it and we do a very good job. Never paid for it, but it's our responsibility. It's cheap to get it, but it's more expensive to maintain and care for it.
Well, I don't wanna see the opposite of this one, we paid for it, and now we don't have any care and control over it.
Not yet, not
So
yet.
that's the conundrum
That'll be your job.
That's the conundrum we find ourselves in right now,
I
to some
don't,
degree.
I don't think we can compare what we have here at Golden Park with Victoria Park. It's two opposite realms.
No,
as
no.
the chair said.
we're gonna be taking care of this park.
Well, we own it.
Yeah, we're gonna be
paid
taking
for
care of it, yeah.
The other one, we're taking care of something.
Yeah, and we don't own it,
Yeah.
but we take care of it.
Yeah.
This way, we own the park and we take care of
Okay.
it. It's a pretty good deal.
So thank you for the update, we will stay tuned, please just provide me with any further updates on any communications that come back, and we will continue to press forward on that topic.
Okay.
So we're gonna move into, is there any other items from the business arising from minutes? Hearing none, I'll move forward on discussion items and reports. So our first report is the vehicle manager 7.1 servers RFQ, and I'm gonna hand that over to Rory to give us an update on the RFQ that went out for that.
Sure, so this went out for RFQ and it closed on July 10th. We received 5 bids on it. 2 of those were disqualified for failing to meet the requirements of the RFQ. The lowest bid came in from CDW Canada at $104,929.50, and the staff recommendation is to award the RFQ to CDW Canada.
So just a question on that, kind of goes back to the old debate here on procurement, lowest score, if that's the only criteria. I have to assume there were other criteria of meeting certain specifications for the servers that we needed, and obviously CDW Canada met all of those criteria.
In this case, because we're just looking for hardware, we just said if you meet the minimum specs, lowest price wins. It's just purely
So
a
they met, okay, so everybody met the minimum, so then the lowest price took precedent over those, okay. Just wanna make sure we're getting value for, and getting what we want, and the difference of Levada, who was $20,000 more, so just price point.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to move that forward to council, do I have someone who will move that? Have someone second it?
I'll second it.
Any questions on the, hearing none? Okay, thank you very much, Roy. It's easy. All right, now we're going to move into, hand it over to Melanie to give us a brief priority bylaw update. We haven't had one in a little while, so it'd be great to kind of figure out where we are with some things. I know we had some information in our package, but I think you gave us an updated one here this morning or this afternoon.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Hand it over to you then, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So in your meeting package, page 7 to 11, I'll just draw your attention to some changes to 2 of the documents that are in there. I've given you a copy, and with your permission, we'll move the updated copies to council for their August meeting with your permission. The updated report, basically just here to provide an update on all of the priority bylaws. As you're aware, there's 10 priority bylaws for 2025. In the committee report, I've just highlighted 4: procurement, patio, council code of conduct, and the emergency measures bylaw. And then on page 9, and then the printout that you have with you is a list of all of the 10, and and the status of each. So going through that unsightly bylaw we know is complete. There is a step 2 vision that is under discussion that I'll hopefully update in the future. The emergency measures bylaw has been completed, but as required through the province, the emergency plan has to be completed alongside that, so we're 70% complete of that. The emergency measures bylaw is in the council package OneDrive for review while we continue to work on the emergency plan. The procedural bylaw, of course, has moved through committee. There's been some questions, so that has gotten deferred to an August 6th special meeting discussion. So pending next steps from that, we will pivot on that bylaw according to what council's wishes are. The council code of conduct bylaw you've reviewed. I got very helpful feedback. It all pointed back to questions around the complaint resolution process. So based on that, we've reviewed jurisdictional scan, gone through provincial legislation, and changes have been made. That's currently under internal review and then would require legal review and will hopefully be with you soon. The procurement bylaws, great news, Lane updated at the finance committee meeting to say that he has the first draft that's going through a senior administration review process, and that shortly it will go to the departments for review on practical input on identifying if that bylaw meets the work that's happening within different teams, and based on any feedback, adjustments will be made. Lane's update is that he is planning to present a final bylaw draft at the finance committee meeting in September. The patio bylaw, while we were back and forth on a draft, realizing the significance of the questions that were being asked and the importance of engagement with the business community, Planning and Heritage has stepped in to go through this engagement process to get strong legal opinion. They are expecting to bring that to you early fall, along with recommendations to make an informed decision that council will have all the information they need in order to determine the best path with that. But the Planning and Heritage does have the draft being worked on, just waiting on legal opinion. Just 1 second there, bylaw. So with that, as I wrap up last steps on the 2 that are with me, I'm going to be turning my attention by the end of August to our parks bylaw and to the fees bylaw. The parks bylaw, now we are moving into the final 4 to 5 months. We're looking at scheduling, we're looking at needing legal support and making sure that everything's prioritized accordingly to get through legal. There has been some feedback, and even in our last meeting, the SPCI meeting last month, a lot of discussion around the Victoria Park and Promenade bylaw and the importance of getting that updated. So there's some discussion, do we update the Victoria Park bylaw and then move into a new bylaw in January? That's something that's being discussed. There is really strong interest in getting the Victoria Park bylaw updated for a lot of the reasons that were talked about at this meeting last month. The fees bylaw, again, to write our new fees into the schedule. Zoning, of course, is going extremely well. I was amazed their survey drew in 160 plus responses, which is unusually high, and it drew in a wide variety of the age segment. They've got really good data going into zoning, and the great news, the official plan passed, which was the final milestone that was needed to then advance zoning. They're working towards they're meeting each milestone, they're working towards a late 2025 deadline, everything's going according to plan. The capital recovery, as we know, is only a concept. It's not approved for bylaw, the concept's not approved. The next step was to have a discussion with council, and as you know, there was a staffing change. We do now have a new manager, but now we're dealing with more high priority. We've got zoning and we've got procurement, so we've got to prioritize those and then work on having a discussion with council once that's done. So that's with Public Works to do once the priority bylaws are done. And so that's where we are today.
Thank you, Melanie. A couple of questions I have for you. First one is it possible or fair to ask of the department heads in this report, would we be able to put a % complete column as a visual to see where we are? I know sometimes we do indicate in the comments that we might be 70% complete of a particular bylaw. I think from a visual perspective, it gives us an opportunity to kind of zone in and say where we are in some of these. You know, if we're looking at one that's at 20%, it might raise question, why is it at 20%? So although many of these are underway, it's hard to tell other than saying, that it's, maybe completed in May of 2025, but I don't really know where that one, well, in that case it's 70, but, so just, if we can, that would be great to add to it.
I'll add that.
Yeah, okay. Secondly is, with the capital recovery concept bylaw, I know at the time, I believe that was brought forward by a former public works manager, so I'm not sure if that was brought forward based on his own desire, or if that was even the desire of the current administration at the time, which has now since changed again. So I'd like to see this one revisited from a public works, we don't have anybody here from a public works perspective, but to have that reviewed is that even something that is still on the radar of the corporation?
Chair, I can speak to that. There is merit in the concept, it's just, there has to be a discussion to see the wishes really of council. There is some merit in the concept, so the next step is to have a discussion with council through Public Works.
Because I know, well, I thought there was lots of discussion on this, and I didn't feel there was overwhelming support by council to pursue it, but it seemed to have made its way on the list. And the only reason I say that is if there's not a desire or support going forward, then we could be working on another priority item.
Yeah,
We're only
no,
working on 9 of them as opposed to 10, and we have 10 priorities, so
Yeah.
that's the only point I'm trying to make here. I'm not suggesting that myself or anybody's doesn't want to pursue that capital recovery one. I just said we did have some discussion on it, and it didn't at the time seem to be something that was felt as a priority, but I know it's made its way on this list somehow. Okay, we'll leave it at that. And I think that the only other one was that I wanted to make note of was the procurement bylaw, which we, great to hear that they're making some headway in that, but again, it goes back to, like, I think the question is where are we at with that what prompted this percentage of this, so we may be, halfway there, I don't know. Yes, we wanna get to it in September, but then September comes and next thing you know, it's November and we haven't still had it, so, we're so again, I'm not sure, I know the finance department's somewhat understaffed right at the moment, so understandably they might be behind on working on that bylaw, but it seems to raise its head every time we have a council meeting as a result of some procurement action that has happened that would have benefited from the procurement bylaw.
I might add on that
Strengthen that.
procurement, that's kind of differing information than we've heard in finance, because when we had that presentation at finance, they thought it was gonna be another year. Remember at finance? So now we're saying September, so there's a few inconsistencies there
Well,
too.
it's a good thing, we're going in the right
Oh,
direction.
yeah, that's a great thing,
But I think that goes back to
Yeah.
figuring out where we are, like if I looked at that procurement bylaw and saw 20% and said, that's where we are and hope to have December, I'd be questioning whether or not that's gonna be feasible. So that kind of goes back to what you're saying, if you were thinking that it's gonna be another year, you would think that we're not very far along in that.
Mm.
So again, it's not for you, obviously it's for the department head, you just bring that information back from a finance perspective. I'm not sure who's doing that, if somebody's backfilling for the director of finance.
Chair, to speak to that, at last week's meeting, Lane had given an update and provided the same update to me to pass on to you, and that he does have a draft complete, it's just going through a vetting process internally.
That's good.
And his commitment is to bring this forward to council for discussion in September.
Okay, well, that's
Essentially passage.
good. Okay. Any other questions on the updates? Thank you,
Yeah,
Melanie.
I do.
You do, Bill?
We'll
Please.
do this.
Definitely.
Let's go back to number 9, capital recovery. Lots of discussion. And if anybody was listening to the last federal election, leaders made promises that municipalities have to cut these development fees because it's hindering, it's affecting development because the cost of, like in Toronto, say Halifax, these fees are quite exorbitant, so I thought we made it quite clear, let's just park this, as the chair said, let's just go with 1 to 10, except 9. That's, I think we've had a lot of discussion on capital recovery, and that's really what it is, it's to get the developer to invest money into lights, sidewalks, active transportation pathways, that's our responsibility, because as we build new developments or build new places for people to live, whether it's single family, duplex, triplex, or a multi-unit apartment building, there's a tax that comes from that. And my next question is, all the talk, and I know the deputy remembers this, all the talk about the strategic plan. Passed the strategic plan, had it in place. Only time I heard about it was during the interviews for the CAO. How are we integrating the strategic plan into these priorities? Could I ask them?
I'm sure can, we ask them questions or no?
Thank you, Chair, through to your worship. So, as you pointed out, capital recovery is the only one on this 10 that is not gonna have a bylaw. The only approval was one conversation to understand the concept more fully. That's all. So by the end of the year, host a conversation. And that's the only piece we know right now. Everything else, as you said, is prioritized and has a bylaw attached to it. In regard to the strategic plan, as you're aware, that was developed 2022 to 2023.
2022 to 2026.
Correct. The development of it was 2022 to 2023 to create a plan for 2022 to 2026. Thank you. And within that, there's updating governance. There is updating a number of documents that these bylaws would fall under, as well as every other team and the work they do and the work at each committee and discussions would fall under that strategic plan. So we, as we discovered, that it has not been a discussion at committees and councils from that time on.
Onward.
And now it's been raised again.
Yeah.
So we've revisited it. There's a number of documents that is with the CAO now. He's hosting a conversation interdepartmentally. And following that conversation, we'll be able to bring an update forward, and it would come through this committee.
Right.
So
And-
it's probably an opportune time to, with the change that we've now encountered with our CAO and an incumbent CAO,
Right.
it's an opportunity to obviously resurrect that as a priority to review
Yeah.
and report on back to council where we are with our strategic priorities. And that's what's probably not happening as much, maybe, I can't say, because I don't know what's going on from an action item perspective in the reporting on that.
And, Mr. Chair, this is not a Melanie issue, this is an issue that was initiated by members of council, took off with our former strategic priorities, strategic planning officer, Carly, she got it going. And there are actions listed to that. It's just that all the time that we put into it, and then it was parked, and no discussion by council. Like, if we pass resolutions in that chamber, that's a legislative body in there. Like, if we're not gonna follow up on them, then why have discussions on legislation that affects the municipality? Again, this is, you come in late to pick up the pieces. All I'm asking, Mr. Chair, is that could we just get an update on the actions that were part of that strategic plan, on where we are at? That's all I wanna know.
So, Ellie, can you?
On the concept plan for capital recovery, it is a concept plan, so that's why 1 to 10, except 9 is what we should be working on. The concept plan, I know what the concept plan is. It is to tax or charge fees on developers to provide capital assets, capital infrastructure to any development that he or she is doing for in the municipality, i.e. building a subdivision, build sidewalks, put up lights. Look, that's our responsibility. Thank you.
Just to build on what his worship said on the strategic plan, I believe that when we first approved it, the idea was that each department was to have metrics and measurable items on percentages of how they and where they and how they've achieved the strategic plan and basically of the 4 pillars. So each of those department managers, department heads should have some documentation, because I know I've seen it from Planning and Heritage. Mike has documentation around how they've met the strategic plan goals and initiatives. So I would think maybe that could be brought forward as well. from the department heads of where they're at, maybe.
Do you wanna comment?
Yeah, just through the chair, I would maybe just offer that we have been discussing this internally. The department heads are meeting, I believe next week, to provide updates on all of those items, and more information will be forthcoming to committee and council.
So we should see some updates coming, that's great.
Thank you,
Thanks for
sir.
raising that,
Thank
Mayor
you, sir.
Brown. Is there anything else, or would you like to?
I appreciate your patience, Mr. Chair. I know you
Problem,
have to get
thank
back to work. You're coach.
We're gonna move on to the next report, which is the draft protocol policy. Who would I like to take that up?
I can speak to that, Mr. Chair. It's on page 12 of your package in the PDF. Just want to thank Doug for putting a lot of work into this over the last number of years, but really the purpose of this is to provide some additional background context and rationale for the draft policy before you. And the recommendation at this time is that council, or that committee recommend to council to adopt the protocol policy. The city currently does not have a protocol policy, which means that there's no formal basis for approving or declining protocol requests from external parties. And that situation can pose a risk to the city's reputation if protocol events or requests are not managed appropriately. So this policy provides a high level, policy framework for staff to make decisions on a number of these items that are outlined in the policy. I won't get into all the details, it's all in the package there for you, but the team here is happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time. Again, this is a draft document. As with any other policy with the city, it's something that we'll be constantly reviewing and revisiting based on best practices elsewhere and evolving situations within the community.
Thank you. I do have a question. So in using the example that was provided, so I did send a note today asking if someone could just forward me what the protocol policy was. I wasn't familiar with it. Obviously, this is the reason why I wasn't familiar with it. We just have it. But then still trying to understand some examples. So the raising of a flag request, I'll make an assumption that those come in to the request to the office of the mayor, and in most cases, if not all, you oblige and do that, I assume. So is the example here that we need to have some type of policy around that, and that would allow us to maybe vet some of those requests and what it means and stands for and all of those things? Is that essentially what this example would be for this? And I'm looking at you, Doug, just in sense, because I assume you just mentioned you were the proponent behind this, so Doug, you're.
Yeah, Doug can jump in if he wants to provide some additional detail.
Yeah, so you're pretty much exactly correct. That's an example in which the protocol policy would be applied. So we essentially, like you said, currently don't have any kind of formal reasoning for whether we approve or deny requests. There's informal things that departments surely use, but it's typically kind of treated on a case-by-case basis. So the other factor I would add to is this is kind of an overall policy that addresses several areas that would be covered by protocol matters. So the example you indicated was for external requests for organizations for flag raisings. It also would cover our tower lighting. It would cover things like the freedom of the city we had recently. So it just kind of gives a few parameters at a high level of what kind of events we are supportive, or protocol events specifically related to this policy that we kind of would pursue or not pursue depending on the request. So it also would cover, for example, flag display. So most municipalities would have a kind of procedure or protocol for, in the council chambers, for example, we have a provincial flag and a Canadian flag. There's kind of an order of precedence that you always have one flag on the left, not on the right. We have our 3 flagpoles outside. It kind of provides high level direction for these kind of protocol related matters that need consideration kind of in several aspects of the corporation. So
Doug, this in the protocol, so where I'm trying to make the distinction here between protocol and the policy for something else very similar. So protocol in the regard to, in relation, to the official representation of the city of Charlottetown, like say in chambers, you were talking about flags, flag raising, the tower lighting, those types of things. How does that differ from, say, protocol or policy around, for instance, granting a permit for a concert in a park and not having protocol around that?
Yeah.
Is this boxed into matters of the official office of the mayor and council or city versus what can happen at a park as a concert, or a permit to do something? Is it different?
I can answer that. So yeah, I guess the word protocol is maybe the hang up. In terms of protocol is the kind of system of rules that govern conduct for ceremonies related to diplomatic occasions. So protocol is like a reference, like for example, when we had Prince Andrew visit, that's a matter of protocol. So it's a specific kind of category of types of events that we do. So a flag raising, for example, if we have a request to raise a flag from His Royal Highness during the visit, that's a matter of protocol. It covers a specific list of items that's outlined in the policy in the scope, but it in terms of broader application, it only relates to the protocol events that are kind of outlined here.
Okay.
So the other side of the word protocol is you would use it kind of colloquially as like, what's our protocol for handling this situation? It's not that so much as this kind of overarching governance of how do you deal with these matters of dignitaries and certain types of events, but not everything. So the very specific example of a concert in the park, just throwing that out there, that's not treated here. That's separate, and this relates to specific matters that are handled not only by the Office of the Mayor, but Office of Communications, and also in our department in some areas like the Freedom of the City, for example. That's something that's led by our area. So it's kind of a catch-all term for those items.
Does this cover all requests for flag raisings?
It would cover, all requests from external organizations for flag raisings.
So is there gonna be a stronger definition? Because those requests come in all the time, so how do you decide what is proper and what isn't? If, like, for example, the Kidney Foundation wants us to hang a flag in reference to the Kidney Foundation week or month. I'm just using that as an example. Where does that fall into? Is that an appropriate protocol? Although it's a great activity, but is that something that should be hanging in the city of Charlottetown on a flag? How do you differentiate?
So there's two sections that would relate to that question. So in this example, if the Kidney Foundation reached out to put a flag up, we would be using the policy to look at section 4, which has prohibited events. So it lists examples of organizations that we would not approve. And also section 9, which covers requests from external organizations for flag raising or tower lighting. There's a list of, in section 9.4, A through F that relate to, that would be a public awareness and education campaign. So falls under the category of something we would approve, and it's not prohibited, so it's something that would be essentially granted, and then the actual procedures for how that takes place is handled operational essentially. So this policy generally is kind of the why we're doing what we're doing, and then there's kind of the actually carrying out the flag raising, which is handled by the Office of the Mayor. So this gives us some policy backing to be able to respond to these requests, because as of right now, if the Kennedy Foundation wanted to raise a flag, we of course grant them because it's something that's important for the community. But if other groups that didn't align with the city's values or role reached out, we wouldn't necessarily have any reason to deny, and that's a situation that could pose a risk to the city's reputation.
So do we have protocol in lowering of the flag?
Half-masting flags. So this covers kind of the general policy for that. As of right now, we informally follow the federal government's process, but what will need to be developed after this is procedures that are operational for how we handle flag lowerings. I can give you an example where some of the flags at the event grounds don't go all the way to half-mast based on how they're constructed. So if we had a policy that said that all flags have to go at half-mast if His Royal Highness was to pass away or something, but we aren't able to lower those flags halfway, we'd be in contravention of our own policy. So the procedure helps us operationally handle those situations.
So can I ask another question? So then how come we're able to, we hang up on that flag at Christmas time, the baby Jesus and the camels, and they're all walking towards the light? So does that fall under, probably wouldn't meet protocol, cause it says no, you can't have religious stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know that exact situation, but if it was from a religious organization, according to this policy, we would not proceed with it. I would add that this policy and the wording, there was kind of a jurisdictional scan across Canada from St. John's, Newfoundland to Whitehorse, several municipalities across the country. And this wording is not anything that isn't found in any other of these documents. So I can share them if you'd like, of municipalities across the country, from small Colchester, Nova Scotia, all the way up to Toronto, who have almost exact wording about type of prohibited events as municipalities and what's permissible. Exactly. So this is based on a lot of research and a lot of work to make sure that it aligns with best practices, to make sure that we are able to offer the flag to community groups that align, and that we have some rationale and reasoning for requests that might be denied.
Well, Doug, certainly thank you very much, and kudos to you for taking this on and recognizing that we don't have a policy for that. And I'm sure here today we would support moving that forward. Do you wanna, are you bringing it here to awareness, or are you bringing it here to hope to bring it to council for their review of it as well? Because we're supposed to be adopted.
Has to be done.
I just don't know if we're drafting right now or
Moved.
Council would adopt it by resolution if they so
are you
choose.
ready to bring it there, is what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then I think, it's something we don't have, so we put it out, we developed the procedures operationally. We might adjust it on a go forward if there's any kind of realization, there's something that isn't covered, and we can definitely come back, but the hope is that this can get advanced to council and we can start implementing.
So you've completed enough
Yeah, lead up
to
to
advance,
advance.
I'll second that.
Well, thank
So
you
the
very much.
resolution's on the floor, Mr. Chair, if I could just speak.
You spoke to it.
I didn't.
Oh, sorry.
No, you can't be heard. She's on the other side, I'm over here. But I can tell you, Mr. Chair, and Melanie can attest to it, there's some individuals, community members, why are we raising the flag for Chile? Why are we raising the flag for Ukraine? Why are we raising the flag for any country?
Right.
Well, there is a reason. Because when you look at interests of community, a place of gathering, a place of celebration, a place of belonging. So belonging also is represented by their flag. That what represents me as a Canadian is our flag. So when I go somewhere, I want to make sure I have a Canadian flag that's on my backpack, or something that shows that I am Canadian and I am a proud Canadian. So we can debate and discuss, what flags go up for what country, but place of belonging is very important. Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island always has been a stopgap. It's been a landing pad for some new Canadians, and then they move to the bigger cities. Why? Because there's interest of community, place of celebration, place of gathering, place of education, place of recreation. All those great interests of community that holds our community together. So, we're not always gonna get it right, but I'd say 99.8%, and Melanie, we're coming from Ursa, can tell you that new Canadians that see their flag flying in front of the City Hall, which a lot of new Canadians identify with the mayor's office or the council. They don't know what a premier is, they don't know what an MLA is, they know what a prime minister is, they know what a president is. But when it comes to jurisdictions like municipalities, it's the office of the mayor and council that they can identify with. So I think this policy is great, and I'm very happy that you did that scan, jurisdictional scan right across the country. Big municipalities, small municipalities, so we get a good scope of what we wanna do and where we wanna go forward. But everything that's there, Doug, except what the deputy mentioned about the Christmas flag that was up in front of City Hall last year, we've been following this. Now, some may say, well, what about if you put up the flag of Israel, or a flag where there is conflict? Well, you know what? We're in a world where there's always gonna be conflict. We discovered that the other day with a proposed concert for the city. Again, this covers, I think, a lot of great points that just puts it all in writing. So thank you, Doug, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, thank you for that. Okay, we're gonna move forward, thank you, Doug. We're gonna move forward, our last report on the draft of bylaw development policy, and Mike, you as well?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report is on page 20 of your package. So the purpose of the report is to seek committee and council support for adopting a new internal policy that formalizes the process for developing municipal bylaws. So, sorry.
Did we get a seconder for the
Yeah.
protocol policy? You
Sorry.
did, okay.
So just for just in the context of all the work that Melanie and her role has been working on for the past number of months, trying to modernize all of our bylaws across the corporate entity, we're focused on trying to standardize that process, and so that's what's being reflected in this policy before you today. Respectfully, the recommendation is that committee recommends that council adopt the proposed bylaw development policy. And just for some background, currently the city of Charlottetown follows the Municipal Government Act for bylaw development, but lacks a formal internal policy. So that gap can lead to some inconsistencies in quality, transparency, and fiscal oversight. So just an overview of the proposed policy, it introduces a standardized, transparent process for all new bylaws and major amendments. Some of the key components would include a scoping report, which would evaluate policy options for dealing with specific issues, the legal and financial impacts, and provides a rationale for a recommended approach from the staff level advising committee and council. And it also outlines the consultation aspect as we work through some of these various issues in our communities. So it requires engagement with relevant council committees, stakeholders, internal departments, and of course our respective city solicitor. And then lastly, I would also point out that details out the implementation plan that's needed for any new regulatory document. So how the bylaw will be enforced and communicated to the public and within the community, and identify the resource needs and the timelines for successful implementation of these new regulations. There would be some exemptions to this policy, namely some of the planning and development ones. Those are identified, there's a separate process identified in the Planning Act provincially that outline all of that. And then obviously, minor amendments that wouldn't have any major impact on the local business community or the community at large. So with that, I'll just ask if committee has any questions, and happy to have a chat about it. We, again, I would just emphasize that, this is draft. We've been discussing this internally with all the department heads, looking for feedback. And again, the priority here is just to try and work out a standardized process to work through these new initiatives.
So I do have a question, so that I fully understand. So this is a policy around the development of a bylaw.
That's
So-
correct.
Councilor McKinnon says, want a bylaw for, no smoking drugs in the park, this would be the policy or framework that will allow that. That does not exist right now. And is that in the way of, or even for instance, we're talking about a new policy right here for the capital recovery, or bylaw. So is that suggesting we have no formal mechanism in place to allow us to develop our bylaw, a new bylaw? Is that how I'm interpreting this, the development of a bylaw?
So we have informal processes that we follow, but there's nothing formal adopted by council outlining what that process should include. So with those two examples, if these were being initiated by a council member, they would be identified through the notice of motion process. And at that point, staff would bring back a report giving council your list of policy options and what those options can look like from fiscal impact, legal considerations, etc. A bylaw could also be initiated at the staff level if there's something that is identified by staff as being extremely high priority or of interest to the city. So it really just lays out that roadmap so that we're consistently dealing with all these issues and educating council as best we can, so that you have all the information that you
So it
need
is
to
on
make
for the
a
development of
decision.
bylaws. It's a policy for the development of bylaws.
That's correct.
So my second question is, and thank you for bringing that forward to this group, it makes sense obviously from a strategic priority perspective under our committee here. Are you here also representing all the other departments? Because obviously bylaws fall within different department areas, so are you here as in support of all of the directors and the CAO in presenting this? Because you're not just here from your own perspective of integrated growth and, right?
That's correct. So this policy has been vetted through our senior administrative team and also the department heads.
Okay, so I'm just trying to align what we are being asked of here today from this committee. So we're looking at it from a strategic priority perspective. And obviously, Melanie, this would fall within your area as well.
Tracy, to the mic, very thankful to see this. This would prevent challenges. I know early on, we were sorting out the bylaw policy and Councillor Beck asked to review bylaws in advance, and conversations like that have been coming up. And so Mike stepped in beside us as we fleshed out the process to document it and make it really clear in the future. So when you pick your next 10 priority bylaws or whatever bylaws are prioritized, that the process is always the same based on the situation.
Okay, so I'm trying to be clear, the difference though, what we're doing right now is we're reviewing current bylaws, updating them, renewing them, adding, editing, whatever. I'm interpreting this one as a policy around the development of any new bylaws that come in. So like my example would be the request that moving forward, or a bylaw for whatever number of things that the city feels we need to have that we don't have. This would be a policy and framework allow us to be consistent in how we approach that. And you said we have some unofficial quasi things in place right now that allow us to do that, but this would really firm that up and allow us to have that consistent approach to doing so. Is that my understanding?
That's correct. So as we've been working through some of these, the priority bylaws identified by council, obviously without having a policy in place, staff have collectively been working on laying out that roadmap based on each issue. This policy would apply to, if adopted by council, would apply to any new bylaws or regulatory
Amending
Or bylaw
existing.
amendments.
Yes,
Yeah, it's right there in the scope,
Yeah.
20,
Yeah,
page
no, I'm just
22.
trying to make sure we understand it fully here.
So it's really about just trying to make sure that we have a clear roadmap in providing council the information that you need to make the best decision possible.
Thank you for that.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thanks. So, in reading the draft policy, it makes sense the process for council in terms of a notice of motion. And so then a report would come back to outline what the expenses are to an amendment or to creating of a new bylaw. But what's the process for, if a staff brings forward, who do they give their notice of motion to? Because at the end of the day, it's still
Since you
council's
bring it to
decision,
committee, you shouldn't.
so, I don't know.
I'd say we go to the committee, maybe?
So through the chair, when it's a staff recommendation to fall under section 5 of the policy, so municipal staff may identify a need for a new bylaw or an amendment to an existing bylaw due to legislative changes, operational requirements, or public concerns. A report outlining the rationale, implications, and recommended approach would be prepared, submitted to the senior administrative team or the CAO for review. And then from there would go through the regular committee process. So committee and council are receiving all that rationale before you're making a decision or being asked to make a decision.
That's, Michael, again, that's the importance of standing committees, is that these are specific bylaws that count with, let's say, Department of Public Works. Well, planning is separate on its own because it's the foundation of all municipalities, that we have a planning and development bylaw, plus an official plan that we adopted the other night. But, you know, it's clear on page 22, scope, this policy applies, section 2, subsection 2.1, this policy applies to all bylaws proposed, amended, or repealed by the municipality, including those initiated by council staff or public interest. So what are we currently doing now?
So through the chair, it's dealt with on kind of a
Ad
case
hoc
by
basis?
case. So depending on the issue, staff would collectively discuss the issue, determine how best to engage appropriate stakeholders if engagement is needed, conduct a best practices review, and bring forward recommendations to council.
Right, right. So, Mr. Chair, if you know, it's a great framework, now we know that we have something to work with, but it's not adding an extra layer of bureaucracy to our current legislative responsibilities, is it? Like, do we have to, will it require a bylaw overseer officer? Like, that's what I'm trying to find out, will it create something that creates another office, which only, you know, adds to, you hear developers talking about it and community members, we get too many, for a small municipality, there's a lot of layers on the onion.
Through
Same
the
with
chair.
an onion.
Through the chair, that's a great question. The intent is for it to really be held by the originating department. You know, if it's a council request, the department that deals with that specific issue at an operational level would lead that initiative in consultation with the rest of the team. So, and at the staff level, obviously if it's a staff recommendation coming forward, it's being the originating department where that recommendation is coming from is owning that issue. And again, in consultation with the rest of the department so that we're bringing forward, I guess, a holistic approach to dealing with that specific issue. So to answer your question, no, we're not asking for staff to administer this. It's using existing resources and really just laying out a transparent way that all these issues will be or would be dealt with in the future if adopted by
There's a
council.
framework to work within, and there's a guidance from, in terms of scope, purpose, scope, and so forth.
And to your
Great
point, all these things
I'll
are
move.
generally
So we have
happening.
a
It's-
mover, sorry,
I'll move.
and second, perfect. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Great piece of work, and look forward to seeing the outcome of that. So just looking at our time here, we're any new business today? If not, we'll
Business.
for adjournment. Second. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate the reports. Thank you.